So good afternoon. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I think this will be our group for today.
Hey.
So just to review the agenda for a bit, in addition to the approval of minutes, we have, based on our input from our last meeting, we've got a couple of design concepts. Andy is on the phone and is ill today, and Norm's here to review those with us in person with annotation from Andy. The next item is really to talk about kind of the elements of where we, the role of the committee, our work to be done between now and the end of the consulting agreement. And that includes, a whole number of things, financing, revenue projections, grants, those operating models, and those kinds of things. So in a conversation we're going to have together as a group, led by Andy, we're going to be going over that. So is that all right, sound all right with anybody? Any other comments on the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to announcements. Are there any announcements to come before us today? Hearing none, we have, the minutes have been distributed. Any comments, questions, or amendments to the April 4th minutes? Hearing none, I ask for a motion to approve them.
So made.
Second? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. And item 5, I'm going to turn it over to Norm and Andy to discuss our design concepts.
Well, do you want me to take lead on this?
We've got Norm's presentation up on the screen right now.
Okay, Randy, take it away.
Okay, Andy, thank you. Based upon the previous meeting we had, we went ahead and took a look at some of the suggestions that were made and some detailing. And what we have now is a presentation before you that lays out the footprint of the proposed garage, which is in this location on Candle Street and Salem Street. We created a bus and taxi pickup area and waiting area that is on the east face of the garage. There is you'll see in the next slides, a lobby, large lobby in this area, and an elevator and stair core in the northeast corner and the northwest corner and the southeast corner. This is the a proposed footprint for the grade level of the garage. Occupied space would be some street level retail at this point. An occupied area in here that's about 5,800 square feet of usable space. We created a little office down here for part-time management or whatever we want to have functioning in the garage. As I said before, a stair and elevator tower at that point, and an entrance and exit lane down on the south face of the garage. The garage functional plan is you would enter at this point, go up the ramp, and continue until you find a parking spot, park, and then you come down the ramp on the inside, which is a shorter move, and down and out. And this is the occupied space that's illustrated at that point.
So why don't we take a slide-by-slide questions on,
Sure.
on that last
Sure.
slide?
Sure, at any place.
Can you go back to the circulation, on the first one? Now, we'd also talked about a road
Right.
going on the,
Coming
to
in
the,
this way.
yeah.
Which is fine from the garage perspective because it creates the entry side on the right side of the building, so there would be no cross moving in there.
Right. But you didn't show that here. You showed, we haven't seen this before, this taxi and bus lane? Is that new?
No, that's, you asked at the last meeting
Yeah.
that we delineate where
Okay.
that could be.
So why don't you describe how that would work? Would that just be?
Okay, well, the people would come out of the garage down this way, wait in the waiting area down here, and then they would come out and get either a taxi or a bus. The buses would come in this way from the south to the north, pick up, and then go out to Salem Street.
Jim, I'm gonna address some of this in my presentation as well.
Okay,
That's Andy.
okay. So he's gonna discuss it later, is that what it's saying?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
How big is this garage, Bill?
In terms of.
Number of spaces?
How many spaces? Okay, we have two garages.
Oh, I don't wanna jump ahead if that's
Let's
it.
jump ahead. They're in the, I'll tell you right now,
270.
they're in 270 or 282, 270 spaces or 282 spaces.
Now, is that higher than what we talked about the last time? It sounds like it is.
It was 260, I think.
It was 250, but the geometry
That's how it is.
yields the number of spaces,
Okay.
okay? We also wanted to keep the garage low, which it does, and, so we've created a little area in here for the mechanical and electrical rooms that the garage needs to have, so it's out of the way for everybody, and it's accessible through this, area, through the occupied space area. Typical floor is straightforward. The circulation is, what is it? I did something, it's not moving anymore.
Wanna go back or not?
I'll go back.
I don't know. Anybody got a technique with this thing?
There it is, okay. Needed to let it rest a minute. Okay. Circulation is straightforward. The other thing that happens is, as you make the turn, you see the stair and elevator in each corner, so people get oriented to where they want to go once they pass the stair and elevator. This is option B. Very sensitive. Option B is more of a straightforward garage, and the only reason we did this was for budgetary purposes, so you could compare one against the other and what that occupied space is costing you. The same entrance and exit on the south end of the garage, same elevator stair towers in the corners, and the function is very straightforward. You come in, up, and then down, and out. And
So let me ask a really dumb question. So I'm in a car
Yeah,
in the right, at the bottom of the screen on the
Here,
right-hand side.
yeah.
And then where do I go from there? Do I go
Go
straight?
straight
Okay,
up.
straight, okay,
And you turn,
okay,
and then you go straight up again.
okay.
We created this little area in here because what happens when you get above this ramp, there's headroom to get into this area. So this could be a special reserved area. If you wanted to create something, you could have some assigned spaces in this area. Because it's,
It's lower headroom?
no, the headroom is okay,
Okay.
because the ramps get us up. It's just that it's out of the normal
Oh,
straightforward driving, and you don't wanna have people coming in and out of here. So I would suggest that we, assign this to some other use. Okay?
Other, questions as we go through?
I will, but I want to give Andy a chance to
Okay.
talk first.
And again, the typical floor is the same as the other one. What we did was we took a look at some, and following this illustration are a bunch of physical buildings that we've done, that you can see the relationship of the materials and how it's handled. Until we find out exactly how we want to dress this garage, then we'll apply the materials to this garage. Okay? Here's your entrance and exit on the south end. This is the south face of the garage, your entrance and exit. And to celebrate the building that's on the site, we created some arches on some of the windows, which you'll see. We have a photo of the old brick building in there. You'll see how those arches work. And this is the stair and elevator tower where we put a lot of glass. This is the stair and elevator tower in the northwest corner, right? So you can't see it, and that's This garage ends over here up on that bay. What we're proposing here are some punched windows, as you'll see in another illustration as to how punched windows look in a garage that are brick clad. This is the long elevation, and the screen's a little wobbly here, so it might not be exactly translating exactly right, but this is what we did, or we're proposing for these smaller retail elements that can be broken down by that section, or it can be elongated, however you want to do it. And here again, we're proposing glass with an arch, and these are a series of punched windows along with some vertical openings that we need to have in order to maintain the open qualifications of the garage for a non-ventilated structure. Okay. I don't think, while it's not that expensive, it's only about $4 a square foot more, you need to sprinkle it and ventilate it. So it creates a headroom issue with the sprinklers, and it creates an open issue with the ventilation. And it's another system that you have to maintain. So what we're proposing is we start with this so that we can qualify for an open parking garage. As far as the counts are concerned, garage option A has 270 spaces in it, and garage option B has 282 spaces in it. And that's accounting for the handicap spaces that we have to provide in terms of the code. And you can see what happened when we were talking about garage spaces before. We mentioned that the square footage is very important, the square foot utilization per car. This is, garage A is down at 326.5 square feet a car, which is very efficient. And garage B is at 331 square feet a car, which is also very efficient.
How does that compare with other garages that you're building?
That's right in the efficient ranges.
Sweet spot? Okay.
It's a good place to be. Then what we did is we ran a budget for option A and option B. And the way we do our budgets is historically we have square foot utilization figures for each one of the construction techniques or categories on the side. We've used those standard figures, and we take the square footage and we put the square footage against it. So your garage for option A with the shell space, there's shell space is $150 a square foot to prepare. So that's a little excessive in garage A, but if you look at the cost, we're at,
So Dave, that's a little better than the number you said, and a lot better than the number I said.
Yeah, and I think in fairness, one thing I would say, if we talk about these numbers in public, right, we still haven't gotten to I think you're starting to get to it, but the Nantucket feel, which is kind of where I just assigned. But I think you'll find out, no matter what your imagination is, we're gonna want something else in addition to that. So I was adding just an arbitrary $5 million to deal with those.
Okay, but what we've done, based upon some information that we've received from Dave and everybody else, is we took the numbers, added them up, and came to a cost. Then we put in a construction contingency of 10%. We put in a Nantucket factor of 35%.
Yep.
Is that a Nantucket factor for construction?
That's to get the material over here.
Construction.
For construction.
It's not like
Correct.
to make it look like Nantucket in terms of facade?
No. You can do, let me get to
all
those
right.
photographs. And we put in an owner's soft cost of 25% on top of the cost. And that soft cost is for your financing, your bonding, all of your other soft cost issues. So this would be a project cost for you rather than just a construction cost on the garage. So the total construction cost is about $3.8 million.
$13 million.
And we're at about $48,000 a car.
So what I was saying, Norm, is I think there's another line yet beyond Nantucket costs,
Yeah.
which are the Nantucket feel, right? There's gonna be brick facade details that people want, and somewhere in there, we should at least have it identified. There'll be something, I promise, from our HDC and so on that will change the cost of the building.
Let's look at the photos, and I
Okay.
can tell you what we've done with,
Okay.
there's a lot being done with embedded brick now
Okay.
in the product, okay? So,
Any questions on this before we, from
Before
anybody,
we
before
jump off.
we leave this slide? We just
And-
quickly go through the line items.
Okay.
So,
quickly, okay, general
well, I mean, I just
conditions.
let me take a look at it, so.
Okay. We've considered that this was on piles based upon information we've received, 50-foot piles. So normally our foundations are about $4 a square foot, but here we're putting in $10 a square foot for foundations. You got the precast superstructure, slab on grade and cast in place, stairs, the block rough carpentry, glass, metal, hollow, metal wood, hollow miscellaneous metals, mechanical and plumbing, electrical, miscellaneous grills and screens at $15 a square foot, paint, graphics, signage, and striping, elevators, 2 elevators at about $100,000 each, cork joint and sealer, non-garage construction, which is anything you want to do with it, and then there's the entrance and exit control equipment and processing. So it's a complete package that you have here, including general contractors, profit and overhead and everything else. So the cost per space on this one is a little less because you don't have the burden of the occupied space in there, which is $150 a square foot. But that's really the difference. That makes a difference. Okay? So now, we're all,
Hey, man,
yeah,
I just want to make sure that my math is right. So the actual construction cost on the shelf space, the occupied space that we're going to have for other uses,
yeah,
is about $870,000, but the cost difference between option A and option B is about $1.4 million. Is that correct?
yeah.
So basically, for those 12 spaces, those 12 extra spaces here, or losing those 12 spaces, we're going to pay a premium of $1.4 million for these other grade level uses to get incorporated into the structure.
That's about right.
Okay.
Okay? So this is a garage that we're just completing in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It's a precast garage, and the skin is a precast panel. So when we decide what we want the garage to look like, we can change from columns and spandrels to precast wall systems. And those precast wall systems can come with brick embedded in the precast. And we can have eyebrows on the windows, we can have no eyebrows on the windows. We can do a lot to it. And the next slide, you'll see something else that is more important. You can see that the arch on that section down at the lower right-hand corner and the little metal canopies, which are a detail that Bethlehem uses a lot. And the little offset of the wall here and there, and some details in the precast. We can have recesses, and it really
Breaks up
doesn't
the-
cost.
Breaks up the long linear look at that side of the.
Yeah, well, there's another one I'll show you that breaks up that long linear
Okay,
look.
okay.
But this is the fun part of it, because you can do anything you want to the facades, and you can make them look like individual little buildings, or you can make them long. So this is a more of a close-up of that building with some storefront retail. Now, the topography here slopes down significantly. So what we had to do was, as you do, is you step down. The nice thing about where your garage is situated is it's rather horizontal. So we're not going to have the stepping or anything like that going on.
Excuse me, just a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just understand, or how many, is this the same vertical size?
Oh, no, your height's gonna is ending here,
Okay,
right? This has two or three more stories above
okay,
it.
thank you.
It's backed up on me again.
So normally, are those windows or
No, those are openings.
those are openings? They just
Yeah.
have the cross, whatever,
Yeah,
okay.
there you go. Okay, here's another example. It's not anything to do with the size of your building, but it's how you can treat the facade of the building to make it look like something other than a garage. You can change the material at some point, from a smooth or even a white face brick up into a darker face brick. And you can, this is an elevator and stair tower that has a flat roof on it. And there's the glass insert that you can see at that point.
So Dawn, anything yet that resonates with you in terms of an HDC look, or?
I think that anything that touches a street is going to have that brick facade
Okay.
all along it. I
Okay.
don't see any of the pieces where it's open,
Okay.
and
Open, oh, you mean?
where it's completely open.
Well, the only opening is down on the south end where the cars drive in and out.
No, but I mean, up above, like
Oh,
you
up
had
above?
the facade on like the street side, but then behind, you could see where they were open bays in between. I think that this garage is gonna have to be totally encased with the cutout windows anyway,
Oh,
the entire
Okay.
facility.
Oh, the entire
Okay.
facade will
Because I
have to
think
have
there
the
will be
cutout
a
oh,
window.
rather than those
Yeah,
longer
Yeah, that's
things.
fine, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, okay,
That's
okay.
fine.
But still okay to have
But
open.
it looks like, where you see what look like muntins, are those still open spaces in between? Or is there any
Yeah,
glass?
they're open.
So there's just a
So
screen
they'll-
product or something that
Yeah.
fills those, there's a
It's like a
screen or
screen.
something in there?
Yeah, what we would do is we'd put a safety screen in there, correct.
And it would look sort of like a window.
Yeah, I mean, from the distance, and that, the first one I showed you, for the Bethlehem, it has screens in those openings. It's very hard to see. The reason I brought this one is to show you what a different stair and elevator tower might look like, and a different entrance and exit at the grade level, with a roof line that's totally different than the roof lines that we saw before. And this is getting to the point that, we can do anything we want to architecturally with this building, as long as we maintain the basic function of it in terms of operating requirements and maintenance for you.
So that's an example of a garage that's really in the middle of a urban, I don't know
That's
what the
right.
words are,
That's
streetscape
right.
or something, or, yeah,
Yeah, that's in a neighborhood street,
yeah.
yeah.
Do you know what the height is on that building?
That building,
It looks like it's 4 levels,
20,
right?
30, 40, 50, about 55 feet high.
And that's
We're-
with
there
We're
is-
talking
with a
about 20,
full
we're talking about
4th floor.
32 feet. Yeah. So we're talking about somewhere around here at the most.
Okay. So that's cool, that's cool.
The,
Go
the,
ahead. This
the
is a
old
garage
power,
next-
the old power plant that lined the wall there used to be 28 feet. For what it's worth.
Oh, okay.
This is a garage we completed 2 years ago at Salem State University. And the reason I'm showing you this is the combination of the smooth face material with brick inlays in it, the stair and elevator tower with a flat roof, and then as the length of the garage marches down, we brought the columns out to express individual sections and recess the spandrel panels. So but that's a 700-car garage. And then what we did to illustrate and bring out the entrance and exit is we built this little portico for the entrance and exit, so when we recessed our entrance and exit here, so that when you have to take a ticket, you're undercover, you're not outside, and when you are gonna pay your fee, you're inside also.
Have you seen a picture, a photograph of the building that Dave was talking about? The old,
The old power plant, probably not. I'd have
No.
to
Would you have access to that? That would be.
Yeah, I will do my best. It'll take a week or so. I think I gotta go to the, because we had the whole thing shot before we demoed it, so the Nantucket Historic Society has a whole section on it, so I can go down and get some.
Cool. This is another illustration of a parking garage in sort of, it's a area of town that's being rehabilitated. But you can see, you can express an eyebrow, so that when you look at the building, that's really what you see. And then here are different ways of handling the windows. These are smaller windows, more of them, so it gets more of a repetitive function in there. And this is another stair and elevator tower with an entry and a little canopy over it with some, you know, area lights, period lights, and everything else. Now, this is a garage we did in downtown Haverhill, Massachusetts. The garage is really emulating some of the materials and the character of the adjacent buildings. And this garage also has a pedestrian walkway that connects it to a railroad bridge. But what we did was we used an exterior screening to cover the windows as an architectural feature in some places. And that might be a nice thing to do, because what that does is it connects with the material here visually, which is the stair and elevator tower. I mean, you can do a lot of things to the garage that will be looked at in, you know, over the period of time in terms of what works best for the area. This is another building we did in Virginia that has bigger openings with some screening in it, but the ground floor is really what I wanted to show here. It's another way of handling occupied space on the ground floor. And then we created this portico with the overhangs as it went down. That is, we did a project in Annapolis where we emulated an old fish market that had the green awning coming out over it, and the rails holding it back, and it looks very nice also. But
Don't change that picture. Can you tell me what you think the elevation is on the garage headed down the street, if you will, that way?
what, this elevation?
Yeah, so I look at that, I look at
Yeah.
it, say it's probably 12, 10, and 10, so it's like 32 to the top.
It's about that. It's about, well, the maximum span's about 48 feet, but we can go to 36s. We can do any dimension of 12. or
Yeah, I meant
10.
the elevation. I was
Oh,
trying
the
to get a sense of
elevation.
elevation.
Yeah, this is about what you're gonna be looking at. This is about it. You have grade, the middle level, the top level, and the roof. So that's about the height you'll be looking at.
That's less imposing than I thought. Don, what do you think?
This thing came up again. What do you
Still.
think?
I think it's doable to make it
There you
look
go.
right.
Yeah.
Now, this is a garage we did in West Hartford at Blueback Square. And what it is a series of wall panel sections which punch windows in them. And some of them start in the front of the column, some of them start in the back of the column. So there's also a recess that's created. And you can see the details here of brick with some capstone, but that all came in the wall panel. So it's not laid up later, it's not a second, once you set that up, it's done.
I think it's important for the group to know, one of the reasons we can think about this kind of construction relies heavily on the idea that we'd be able to come into the boat basin, John, set up a crane, offload and swing, so we don't have to truck large members in through the island. So that's one of the, so this same thing, it may be a whole different set of problems if you were building on a different site, just kind of.
It could be, you're right, Dave. And, yeah, I mean, the structural systems we look at steel and concrete, we look at cast in place post tension, and we look at precast. In a marine environment, the precast concrete, which is 6,000 PSI, is by far the most durable concrete you can get. And we're not pouring slabs, you know, it's all really very strong concrete and sealed so that the salt is not gonna get to the rebar and rust out and show a lot of stains. It's also the fastest construction because everything comes sort of prefabricated.
So you think barge, crane, unload?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm thinking bring a barge in at the tanker for your,
Yeah.
set up right on the National Grid side of the property, pick and almost set right on the building with the right
Okay.
We'll
crane.
Pretty
need,
close.
right, we'll need a laydown area where the crane operator will have some pieces that they can start picking from before the day gets on. I just threw this in for humor. This is a companion to the previous garage we showed you at the same location, but it's on the other end of the development. And just to show you what you can do with a precast garage in terms of detailing. So we're not gonna be afraid of doing anything with this garage. We can make it disappear into the background, we can make it an interesting building. And this is a transportation center we finished in,
Norwich.
hmm?
Norwich.
In Norwich, thank you. In Norwich, Connecticut. It's about a 250 car garage, but it also enables the buses to come in from this area and occupy the ground floor. It's a very bad net to gross in terms of what it costs per car. You don't even want to go there because it has a speed ramp to get the cars up over the buses, which we had talked about in the previous design. But again, this shows you what you can do with brick, insets, and precast concrete in terms of creating a facade that creates a period building, which is really what this is.
And those are all open screened.
These are open screens
They look-
down
they
here,
look Nice, yeah.
and these are windows up here,
Oh, they are.
yeah. So, I mean, you can do
some windows?
You can do some windows, you can do,
Okay.
right,
Without,
exactly.
and still get within that jurisdiction
Yeah.
of
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. That's, I hope that we responded to your requests and gave you enough information. We have a handout for everybody and, you know,
Before Andy jumps on, quick question. It sounds like it's about 70 cars per floor.
it's, yeah.
So-
It's about, well,
Be more
on
than
on the
that.
bigger floors were 92.
Yeah, I was
and
gonna say.
small floors were 60 or 38.
Okay. One of the questions somebody had asked me, and I don't know that it was in this meeting, but what if it was a floor lower, so it would be 90 less instead of 270, we'd be
It'd
talking
90,
180,
take a
190.
typical floor, you pull it out, exactly.
Okay. I know that you're gonna ask some questions, but we can wait till Andy about how the buses would work, so that
Right.
would be my other set of questions.
Okay.
So,
Because again, it's a transportation center as much as it is a garage.
so Andy, when we get to financial pro formas, we talked about having up to 2 scenarios, right?
That's correct.
So I'm thinking, if the group, obviously, we should talk about it, but we could actually punt the decision about option A or B for now. We don't need to, in other words, I don't think we need to choose between A or B right now. Unless we as a group felt strongly about one of the 2 options and.
Isn't the
Don?
only difference A and B though, the 5,600 square feet
Yeah.
and the base, right?
Yeah.
That's the only,
Yeah,
everything else
I
is.
think so. Don?
I feel kind of strongly that we have to break it up with some kind of retail space. Maybe it
Okay.
doesn't need to be that big, but to not have it
I'm fine with
take
that.
away,
No, I mean,
take it to none. I
Okay.
think you have to have some kind of presence on that street or.
So John, what do you, I mean,
Well, my thought is, I think you need to have some kind of presence along there. You also need to have some space, I assume, waiting area and those types of
Yeah.
things. Isn't that in your 5,600 square feet?
That's in there.
So some of that space is kind of committed to program.
Yeah.
And, so you need a piece of it anyways. And then I think you need some, even if it's incubator, kind of small space, limited storefront, something along that edge to make it,
Yeah, we
Interesting.
created in the northwest corner, we created a larger lobby, figuring that people wanting to go to the ferry would use that elevator and stair, and they could assemble in that lobby. That lobby could be expanded if you wanted to put tickets in there or something else like that.
could you go to option A, grade level?
Option A, grade level.
There we go. So this is what we were talking about? Well, if we're all in agreement, then let's
I would just say one thing. I agree that this is the right plan if we're gonna go public. I will say again, I just, Norm, with all respect, the island has a very unique eye for what it likes. I would have one more line item in there that just says Nantucket facade consistent with historical, and I would put a factor in there, and I don't know what people think, but 10%, I think we're going to have details that aren't
So
normal.
is that, oh, is
And
that,
because once we put the number out there, folks, we're
Yeah.
living.
No, I
with,
agree with that.
that's-
I agree with
We'll never be able to explain that number again.
Well, we have a larger issue, and that is what's happened with the steel and aluminum industry in the United States. The structural steel that's used for rebar and all of that used to be on a 60 to 90-day commitment. Now it's on a 10-day commitment, and it soon could be on a 1-day commitment for pricing. We were also doing a project in New Canaan, and I talked to a couple of the precast manufacturers to find out what the prices were. I put $40 a square foot in for the precast on this garage. We had been buying, 2 years ago, precast at $32 a square foot. I don't know, and nobody can tell, where that is going to go. So it's just a precautionary tale that I try to put enough contingency in here to take care of anything that might happen within a reasonable foreseeable future, but if we're talking about construction 2 years from now, it could be a totally different number.
How, you showed us some of the pictures, how does your facade treatment come into this number? Now, you showed us different types of.
It's in the $40. I put
It's in the
the
$40.
brick, the brick and what I thought you would like to see, the brick in the openings and some cornice work, and that, it's in that $40 a square foot, okay?
So there's a piece of Dave's Nantucket factor
There's a
in
piece
there,
of it.
but not,
You scared me enough to put.
oh, no, well, it's real. I mean, it's
But
not an HDC piece, though.
but
No, that's
your
my
balancing point is this, that whatever number goes public, it can't go higher.
It's going to be
So
difficult.
we need to have a high,
And by the way, I think politically, right, you get to say, we realize there's still a lot of work to be done on the facade, and we have budgeted for it,
Yeah.
and we didn't presume to know how that would play out yet.
yeah.
Right, so
yeah.
politically it plays well. It's the same thing with the occupied space. I would put a bullet somewhere and list the 5 or 6 uses you think are gonna go in there, thinking
Yeah.
that not all of us are gonna be standing there with somebody who may have this in their hand.
Right.
And that's just, again, me thinking more about how you get
And
people
how it's gonna
comfortable
be.
to talk about the right things, not the wrong
Yeah,
things.
It's gonna be sprinkled in ventilated space, absolutely.
So do you wanna, let's just talk about, do we wanna massage that 13 million now? Do we wanna, or do we wanna say, we're not even gonna, well, I guess we'll need a number for the financial performance in the finance.
But probably your finance group should look at it and be sure that some assumptions that may have been made, soft costs, finance costs,
Okay.
are gonna have to be loaded in here. So you have a project, I know you tried to get to a project cost, but, you probably are a little light on, soft costs for this world, part of the world, but,
Okay.
it's just a.
Well, like, would a soft cost be like owner's project manager services? Is that in here?
Typically, it's going to include engineering, project oversight, project support. It's gonna be the civil engineer in the background. It's going to be all those professional people walking around your building.
So that is or is not in here?
Those are in there in the 25%.
Okay.
Right.
And the question is, how does that relate to, say, other projects we've seen on the island? I'd have to pull the school, we can take a quick look at that and see what we really saw for real soft
Real
costs
soft
compared to what we
costs.
estimated. As an example, Brian might be able to help us just glance at how that played out.
So before we maybe just pick a number out of the air, we should do some more analysis. Okay, with
But I do think
Brian-
I think your
Brian.
point's valid, and I think we're focusing on that A design.
Yeah.
And just comfortable are those 35 and 25% reasonable assumptions for now. And I think we could probably get that to you relatively quickly, within
Sure.
certainly a week or 10 days.
Okay.
So I mentioned to Brian that we're gonna be beginning to get him involved. So I don't know if we wanna, I think isn't his Nantucket factor like 35%?
I don't know if Brian himself really has one. He's
I
not.
know when he did the Old South Road, that was what he threw in, I believe. Anyway, some way of,
I think think those numbers came from planning.
Yeah, the 35%, in fairness, I probably came from a discussion with Norm and I. I took the 28% from the school, and I simply said, what I've seen are things are continuing to go up here, not down. So frankly, then in the last, since we did the school, all the materials on the island, stone, concrete, have all gone up 20%. So I was pushing Norm that, and I sent it through Janet, but that I think 35 was closer to a real
So how do we take
deliverable.
this 13 million and get it to a point where we're comfortable putting it into a formula? You know, I mean,
I sort of assumed that was what Desmond was going to be doing, obviously without input, but maybe they can look at some recent Nantucket projects. We obviously haven't built a parking garage, but there's certainly current projects happening. There's one right here. There's the hospital, there's, several big ones. They could just tell us what theirs is and.
Right. I could set up, if it's all right with the committee, I can grab Janet, and I certainly can grab, a couple of us that were up on the school, and I can run over to whomever's running the fire station right now and set up a 20-minute phone call with,
that'd be great.
I think it's as simple as a dialogue to say,
Okay.
we considered this, does that sound reasonable? Were you surprised by anything? Were there things you would tell us we should factor in?
Okay.
And then, like I said, the only other thing I would offer to the group is a line item, and I would pick a number of 10% that says, the Nantucket facade issues will be addressed in a budget yet to be determined, but showing a line item for it. I don't think it has to be a ridiculous number, but it's enough to know that there'll be adjustments, I promise.
Don?
I can add that.
I'm wondering, I feel like we might be at the stage where somebody from HDC, who's not a former HDC member like me, needs to be
Okay.
brought in
Okay.
to discuss a little
Yeah.
bit about detailing,
Okay.
because that could significantly add to the cost, even in terms of design, if it needs to be redesigned like
Right.
15 times.
Right.
I'm sure that the costs over here have gone up significantly
Yeah.
during the review process, and maybe if they've been brought in
Okay.
earlier
All right.
for some kind of preliminary thoughts, it would have saved some of that.
Would you be willing to pull somebody in from HDC and facilitate a conversation with Norm, or we can invite them to a meeting here, or
I
what do
think we
you?
should probably invite maybe 2 of them to
Okay.
our next
Staff
meeting.
member and have them pick somebody from the board or 2 members from the board?
Two from the board.
Okay.
Okay.
The staff doesn't really advise.
Okay.
They just more process.
Do you want to reach out to them, or do you want the project
Chair
to?
and vice chair, something like that.
Okay.
Can Janet simply write them an email and ask, can they be available at the next meeting to participate?
Chair and vice chair of HDC.
Yeah, or whoever
Yeah,
the chair
that's a great idea.
designates.
Okay.
And what are we gonna show them? Are we gonna show them these types of images to get reaction?
I think we need to show some of them, the more detailed ones that were in the cities, because I think we've gotta have some inkling of where we're gonna go with that, I think.
And will that go right to will that end up in a conversation with, what are you gonna do with that historic building? In that,
Probably.
and are we
It
ready,
could.
are we ready for that?
Well, Ray has already been approached, right?
I talked to Ray about relocating it, I've never talked to him about demoing it. I've never said, how do you feel about removing it and building its character into the garage?
But it's good to, it's always good to ask. I mean, what do you, I don't know.
I just think it becomes more of an issue later when all this
Yeah.
work gets done and then something gets put in front of them and it's not detailed. That's something that they might approve.
Okay, so we'll do that, and we'll about it in the next meeting. So, and are we gonna stick with option A?
Yeah.
We haven't done bus yet.
Okay.
We haven't done anything outside the building, so.
To go forward with option A.
Yeah. So option A, we all in agreement?
Is 270 the number that people are comfortable with?
Spaces?
I mean,
Spaces,
it's-
number of spaces.
How do you decide, how do you?
Well,
define
and
comfort?
reading back to the notes, and, Andy said there's sort of a
inherent deficit of around 200 spaces. There was a conversation last time about 235, about 250, about 270. Is it getting too big? I just throw it out for
I mean, the
consideration.
way I approach it is, how can we get as many spaces in a box that will be acceptable to all the people that make decisions about it? I mean, I don't, I'm not, that's not very scientific, but.
And, I mean, I suppose if it came down to an HDC thing and the top floor needed to be lost, you're still over 200 probably.
Just under, I think.
You're just under, you're probably going under 180.
Yeah.
Plus or minus.
Yeah. Can we come back to the number after we see how you're gonna solve the bus problem? The issue of the buses, so hearing how Andy plans on building the bus flow into the site?
So Andy, are you next?
Yeah, I gotta pull this thing up.
No, I just wanna hear how he's going to do
Yeah.
it, to make sure that they aren't kind of interrelated problems.
Because if the bus really doesn't work on the exterior, and you have to bring it back in somehow,
Right. there are
then
your spaces.
you're gonna lose 50, 60 spaces off the back. That's why I wanted to
Right,
just sort of
right.
start that dialogue a little bit.
And then I'll also have, after he does that, some comments on the occupied space and waiting area too.
Yep. All right.
We don't know, no, we don't agree, we're not gonna bring it inside because of that height.
We did,
Okay,
but
but,
you should hear
okay, all
what the
right.
plan is, to be sure
Okay.
everybody gets comfortable that the plan actually works.
So Andy?
I'm setting
Oh,
you up here.
oh, I see, I'm sorry. Okay.
This laptop. Can't find
Oh,
it.
he has a presentation?
Yes.
When did you build West Hartford? Norm, when did you do West Hartford's garage?
Go back, where was about 8 years ago? We did that with Streetworks, the developer from
Mhm.
New York.
Can you, move them to the slides?
You want me to do that?
I gotta write things down.
How can you write things down like this? Okay, Andy?
Yes, sir. You
I'm
working the show?
I'm doing the slides, go ahead.
Okay, so are we at the opening slide with the title across it?
Yes, sir?
Okay, when I'm ready to go, I'll tell you to move on to the next one, okay?
That's a good idea.
All right, so I put this together to address two questions that Jim Kelly had shot to me. The first question was, where are the buses gonna go and how are things gonna flow across the site with this proposed, intermodal center sitting on it that we're refining concept on? And then the second question is, what are the next steps beyond this? So the first half is really talking about, the first question, the second half of this presentation is really talking about the second half. So now, can you go to the next slide? The first thing I wanted to do was get some context on what the entire site was going to look like. And I went all the way back to the presentation that was done on the Wilkes Square development back in November of '09, and noted that when it was done back there, blocks both B and C, which our proposed intermodal center sits on right now, were subdivided blocks with a transportation on one of them and some residential, that's B, and then a parking garage on block C. Next slide. And then I looked at the road network, and the proposed road network at the time had a series of north-south roads that were running through the site, Washington, Campbell, Old Rail, and New Rail, and a series of east-west roads that were running across the site as well. Commercial, Steeple, which was going to bisect right through the middle of the site and divide blocks B and C, Salem, which would cap block C, and then Main Street, which aligns with the wharf. Next slide, please.
Got
If you
it.
look at this old plan, there has been some clear thought about how this is going to work from a circulation standpoint, how this is going to accommodate the buses here. And I'm not going to walk you through all of the details here, but I will point out that there's a small red P just below a structure that's shown in the middle of the figure to the left. That's your parking garage, and across the street from that, if you continue to go to the left, you'll see a set of blue lines with pink between them, and those are the 6 bays that were proposed at the time for NRTA bus queuing associated with the garage that was going to be across the way. Next slide, please. And back in 2010, as you were wrapping up the Wilkes Square redevelopment plan, the concepts that were proposed, shown at the top here, show Block B with the 6 queue parking area for the buses, across the street from Block C, which is this proposed parking garage that at the time, the thought was that it would be wrapped on multiple sides by other uses to sort of cloak or disguise it here. One of the things I want to point out to the group is we've done a lot of talking about what the height of this should be. And if you look at the bottom left-hand side, this is a diagram from that prior study here. It shows a 40-foot cutoff here associated with the site as a whole to maintain massing here. In the garage, exceeding that just a little bit at the top of the parapets, but otherwise well below that. So there's a lot of consistency here between the work that we're doing 8 years later and what was envisioned back in 2010. Next slide, please. I then jumped to the 2016 presentation, which talked about the newest plan, and I started to refer to this as Harbor Place, of this newest evolution. And the road network is very similar here. There are a couple streets that are not named. Steeple Street no longer has a name in this plan, but it is the one that's running, the orange one that's running right to left across the bottom of the illustration here. There's another proposed street that doesn't really have a name and wasn't envisioned in the prior plan, right next to the tank farm. But Salem Street again goes straight forward. Main Street has now become straight north until it crosses Campbell, but it's all kind of the same elements. Next slide, please. And then there was quite a bit of thought that was put into how traffic might move around this site. The one we had behind us here was the concept at that time was a much smaller garage in conversion of the existing building that we're going to be absorbing here into transportation center. But you still had NRTA vehicles queuing there along Salem Street, and they were actually queuing within the street, according to this concept here. And I used this as sort of a springboard. So next slide, please. So I started thinking about how I would lay this out based on option A that Norm had sent over here, and how I would manage both pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic across the site if I was going to make this as a truly intermodal center. So my thought was that I would keep the LTA bus stops where they were on Salem Street, going out toward Campbell here. Access to those would be coming off of Commercial Street and then coming up Old Whale Street to take a left again onto New Salem Street to access those spaces here. This will align nicely with the large waiting area that is in the lower left-hand corner of the proposed facility, and you could also put your bike rental businesses in that area as well, because there would be a fair amount of exposure there. In the upper right-hand corner, you had, as Norm noted, that large elevator lobby, which was really going to become, to some degree, your ferry passenger lobby here, because it would give you the vertical access into the garage, and it's also the closest to straight wharf here. I know that we have a fair number of tour buses and private shuttles, and if this entire site was mine to play with and I was laying them out, I would propose laying these out along the lower end of what is, for lack of a better term, steepest street here. And that would put them close to this unused corner that is in the bottom right-hand side of the garage, which could be converted into a small waiting area, which would allow you site access right down the street to see when these private tours or private shuttles queued up along one side of the street here. It would still give you traffic flow up the street, but it would give you some synergy between those 2 points. And if all the layout continues to exist, in a perfect world, I would propose to convert one lane of that, make it one lane, convert one lane of that, butting right up against the garage, against these 2 small lobbies that are on the right hand of the garage, Uber or car for hire queuing, so that this is truly an intermodal center. We're meeting together bikes, public buses, private buses, shuttles, and Uber car for hire as well. You would still want to maintain a taxi or limo stand along Straight Wharf to meet people as they came off of the wharf, coming off the ferry, and you would still want to maintain your kiss and ride short-term parking along New Wall Street for people who are queuing up to wait to come in and out of the area. But this, to me, seemed like the best plan for managing and dispersing circulation across the site, meeting all these uses and positioning the facility as truly an intermodal facility, which is going to benefit us when we start talking about grants, awards, loans, that type of thing. So I'm going to stop here and let folks react, and then we'll move to the second question.
Questions?
I'm gonna start off by saying I understand why we're looking at some of the designs that we're looking at today. I get it with capacity, the size of the lot and everything, but it seems to me, unless Andy, your dream and my dream are kind of similar with everything in one place, but the way it's laid out here, this seems to be getting away from the transportation center component concept of it, and certainly not what I think of a transportation center. Just looking at where we're at, the location we're at now, was, our service was greatly improved by being at the Greenhound site. Now we only have a few buses that have to go down Candle Street, turn on to Lower Main, turn back to Washington Street, which can take 20 minutes sometimes, if not longer. So I guess I'm concerned with the taxi and bus lane being shown here on the first slide, the number of spaces. We also have, when I look at the occupied space, on the second slide, we have a really nice customer service center. It's bright, it's airy, it's close to the buses, people can come in and out. Information aids, and I understand that there's 5,800 square feet, but part of me is not wanting to lose what we've built up and have been successful and have been efficient and effective at, and safety, and I'm just not seeing that in this plan, I guess. And I should have also mentioned, I have Chris Boyton joining me today. He's the general manager of the operating company, so I've been keeping him somewhat up to speed. It's the first time either one of us have seen this, so Chris, if you have any comments to chime in, but when you're looking at, I don't know how taxis and buses go together. The buses don't come in, drop off, pick up, and pull right out. There's some downtime, there's some loading, unloading. I don't feel good about this right now in terms of bus efficiency, bus operations, and it functioning as a transportation center for what our customers are now getting and are used to, which I think is very, very nice. We've come a long way in the few years that we've been able to use the Greenhound site. And I just don't want us to see the NRTA taking backward steps that won't benefit the community.
So Norm, could you use a pointer and show us where a bus comes in and where people, where parks and all that? Does it go along the lower red dotted line? Does it come in off Candle Street and then go?
Andy?
We're talking about buses coming into the NRTA bus stops that are shown on this concept, is that correct?
Yeah, the
Well,
blue and white lot.
Yeah, where is that? You know, I'm looking at the first slide of Norm's
Yeah,
presentation.
Andy, we have a cross here. When we did, these two presentations were done separately, okay, because we didn't have a chance to get together. So what we did was we put, Andy, and you can see it in what we sent you, we put a bus pickup and drop-off area on the east side of the garage on Candle Street.
So I think, Paula, that's out.
Same place it's shown on this.
It would be helpful to have had that printed out,
Yeah.
actually, or at least for me, because
That's it right there.
just,
Yeah.
But, so let's just, obviously we gotta clarify. So Andy, in your presentation, there's nothing along Candle Street, is that correct?
No, the figure that you see in the slide that says current concept Desmond 2018,
Yeah.
These are the bus spaces.
that is Norm's option A. I clicked and pasted that and put that onto that site. It's the same concept that Norm went through as option A.
So what do you, but you don't have any arrows pointed to any activity along his lane in option A?
Yeah, we're just saying, you
So we're-
didn't identify that as a bus waiting area.
okay, when you say bus waiting area,
So let me just ask him to finish.
okay,
So,
yep,
so, you see what I'm asking, understand my question, Andy?
No, I don't.
So you've got a bunch of arrows and, you know, saying the taxis are gonna be here and the buses here, but then you've got nothing in that long line along Candle that in Norm's presentation was delineated as
Taxi.
bus and taxi.
No, I wanted to take that off of Kendall Street because
Okay.
the volume of traffic that's on there already.
Yeah, I'm just,
Try and put it onto the surface streets surrounding the structure so that you could improve the traffic flow along Candle going toward Main.
I'm just trying to clarify. So as I said earlier, the queuing along Candle that is in Norm's presentation, we're now disregarding in favor of this slide, current concept, Desmond 2018. Okay?
I mean, we can make either concept work.
No, I understand, but for reaction
We can make
purposes.
either concept work.
No, I understand.
This is bringing together work that had been done in 2016 on Harbor Place with this proposed structure concept that we've reached some consensus on today.
So, to the point, don't look at that first
No.
one.
oh,
Look at this one.
don't orient me, so this is where the bus
And then,
is.
could you show Norm how, I'm on a bus, and I'm gonna get dropped off at NERDA. I'm a bus driver, I'm gonna go pick up people at the NERDA Transportation Center. How do I enter the site?
off commercial.
Norm?
That's Andy's
You don't know.
plan.
Andy,
That's
how do I
Andy's
enter the
plan.
site?
So, the question that I've got is, are we assuming that the current, rail station that exists across Kendall Street remains and that remains unchanged in this concept?
No,
it goes away.
The what?
the existing place you use.
Because I had thought that we were gonna absorb that within this structure.
That's what we're asking you.
Yeah, that goes away, that function, that building goes away, we no longer have use for it. and we need to incorporate the program into this building.
How many square feet?
Right.
It's this,
Yes. They're saying
How many
green,
square
in this,
feet do you
their
need?
scenario we're
we
talking
haven't
about, it
gotten to
goes
that
away.
part, we don't know yet. It's gonna be in the 5,600
It's
somewhere.
in the 5,800?
It's less than that, yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
Today, it's about 1,100 square feet,
1,100.
I would guess.
So I'm still trying to understand, Andy, where do the buses go? Are they in the blue hatched area?
Here on either side of the widened area, along Steeple Street between Old Whale and Candle Street.
Right,
Okay, that's the blue and white stripe?
striped, yes.
Okay.
How big is that?
Do they do this?
Yeah.
Do they pull in here and go like
Yeah,
this?
that's what
and
I'm
then
asking.
go back out?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
That's what I wanna know, cause that makes some sense, but.
Yeah,
And how do we
I would
fit,
imagine.
how do we fit 9 buses in that black and white space?
You won't be able to fit 9 buses, 6
Won't fit
buses,
9 buses.
with this capacity, you're gonna be able to get into that space.
How many, Andy, I'm sorry?
I thought we said
6.
4.
This is the largest number of buses you'll be able to fit into that space. You won't be able to get nine buses at one time into that space.
Where do we put the rest of them?
Huh?
Well, you don't park 9 on your site today, do you?
Well, I thought we were moving the ones across, that are on Washington Street over too. So we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 routes leaving from there.
I think those are the, go
And
ahead.
then, I guess, too, I'm thinking about future years and expanding when we do Tom Nevers and Cisco and, we're married to this, and we do.
Oh, what would you do if you stay at Greenhouse?
It would be
Right. So I think the town always will have some right to be able to use Washington if they expand. And they also will be able to decide on the lower part of Steeple, closer to New Whale, if they wanted to queue some of the buses in either prep or getting them off of Washington and moving them to that, and tour buses or other buses played less of a role, because it would be a street or a way that, or at least an easement, the town would have relatively strong control over.
And then how do they, okay, so they pull in, and how do they park in that blue and white striped area? 6 of them will fit there.
Did you hear that, Andy? She wants to know how they'll park in the blue and white striped area.
Gordon, can you go back to the slide before this?
Yeah, I can try. How's that?
And just so you know, I didn't necessarily endorse the bus use on the Wilkes Square property when that process was going on, so anyway, just for the record.
Good, I'm there.
Okay, so, and this is where I borrowed that from. This is the 2016 Harbor Place circulation plan that was using the existing building as a transit center. And you'll see there is an aquamarine dotted arrow that comes off of Commercial Street, takes a left on the Old Rail, and then a left on the Steeple again, going back toward Candle Street.
Yep.
Yep.
And on either side of it, there are set up 6 large dashes,
Yeah.
which I interpreted it to be bus stops on either side of the street, so that you would allow for traffic movement up Steeple Street between the assigned bus stops, but will reserve the curbside space on both sides of Steeple Street for designated bus stops, which Paula had indicated were very important to her clientele, because they wanted to go back to the same places every time to catch their buses.
Yep. Now, with this, we are, people, because of the door, the side of the doors, side of the bus that the doors are on,
Right.
yeah, we're discharging and picking up, loading in the street. And that third bus, second or third bus can be pulling around while the other buses are loading. I think they need to be, safety. We can't unload on a street.
You can't unload on the opposite side.
So would it be possible for
I
you
mean,
to,
all that red, the red, well, have to go in further down.
So do we need a
I mean,
little more definition?
We need more
about what-
definition, the
Yeah.
placement seems like it would work
Yeah.
logistically, and you can avoid going up to Main Street,
Right.
Yep.
you know, so
Yeah.
the placement's fine, but how much space is really there, do we have enough
Yeah.
space?
And we don't
Parking,
know, I mean, it's,
you know.
yeah, it's a,
And if we had this,
Wheelchair access.
right.
this whole
And I think
side,
that would get defined in the,
Yeah,
as we are in the,
I mean, in theory, it's a great location, but how much space is really there?
okay. And
so
and we're not in that, we're in the block diagram phase kind of thing.
is it possible for you to blow up that section? And with the group's blessing, maybe we could get Paula and Andy and Norm to look at that, just that little area right there in a
That's a
little bit
good
more
idea.
detail to understand at least that they need 27 feet in width and that they need 100 feet and just a little bit more detail so Paula's comfortable, because today, we're still at the 10,000 foot level.
Right.
And I know you're
I know,
jumping
but
down
I'm
to the
already freaking
2,000, right? And, so
You're
I
at
think.
sea, you're at sea level.
Right.
I think we have
I
to.
understand that, I mean, this is.
But we
no-
need
you're-
to get you
live-
comfortable with
Yeah.
this.
how much space is there and give
Yeah.
you some sense of how it can work. And the only way I know to do that is kind of pull it apart for a little bit, so you at least know people are aware of it and what the options look like today. One of my questions for you would be, can the garage, and I know everybody hates this question, can the garage be 20 feet shorter so that there is more room for buses, or does it screw up the ramps if you go 20 feet shorter? Does it force the ramps into a
Well,
slope
we-
issue?
Yeah, we can't make the ramps more than 6%. That becomes,
And does that happen if you cut 20 feet out of the
Well,
garage?
you could lose, I'll tell you what you could do, you could take parking off of one end of the garage, and that would take 18 feet, right? And we just put a 30-foot drive, turning drive aisle, but that's gonna mess up your net to gross on the square footage.
Understand that.
The car's gonna shoot up.
Understand that, the cost goes up for that change.
Yeah.
But I think that's a detail that we should bring back an option or two
Yeah,
to this group so that we can, I think those are the two things that we have to iron out so that you can say that's the final number for the garage. It can work, and then to Jim's point, they can start moving through the economics of the garage.
Yeah, well, that's a study, that's a different kind of study looking at this building and the street system now than we have been doing before.
I mean, Andy, I would almost love it, I'm sorry you're not feeling well, but for you to come over, we've got the buses, on the road to be able to actually see and how that functions and, put them on the site if we needed to see how all that was gonna work.
I can certainly make time for that, Paul. I just need to get past this bug and I will be
Yeah.
100% back in gear again.
Yeah, and I feel bad for you, I had that bug in it.
So maybe, it sounds like we need a little smaller group to do, as Dave said, to blow up that piece, maybe do a little on-site, and even look at the option of, was it reducing the entire building for that reason? Seemed like it would-
I think you're
seemed
talking
like-
about, Norm, you're thinking about possibly reducing the building, the 18 feet for the entire building or just for the
Yeah.
one lane?
Well, first of all, that's the end of the building where the cars are going in and out.
Yeah, that's the entrance.
So
yeah.
that's a
I think
real
that'd be
problem.
tough to.
Yep.
But it only, we could, oh, Jesus, sorry.
Maybe you could look at more street stuff, widening, I don't, so. Anyway, so,
We have, one of the things we can get for Norm and Andy, one of the things I think you could get, Paula, is today's site plan for the NRTA, so they can see the actual distances you're dealing with today. I think that helps them understand.
Yep. Leo's plan.
Right.
Well, the other piece that we need to deal with, and we haven't done too much here, is this concept that I'm laying out is based on the 2016 Harbor Place concept. And one of the restrictions that we've always had is what is happening on these adjacent blocks. So if we're going to get together and do this charrette to ask all these questions, can we get the architect or the urban planner who laid out this concept around the table as well to let us know what the dimensions are on those surrounding streets, if there's any give on those adjacent blocks, you know, or what the limitations are, et cetera.
Are we that far along?
No, I mean, the other thing is, it's, but we have to talk about that because it starts to, you know, as we expand areas, bring them around the block, we're gonna be creating, you know, pull off and lay down areas, it's gonna start to eat up a lot of real estate.
Right.
And at some point, there won't be real estate left to do other things,
Mhm.
and that's
Yeah,
what we have to
exactly.
look at. I mean, you know, if you go with this out, and this is one thing that came up the last meeting, we had some discussion about it. If you take everything outside the building, then it's no longer, this is the land for the intermodal facility, this is the land for the intermodal facility, and now we need a lot of surface dirt to be able to handle moving buses and taxis. And, I mean, that's one of the things with Andy's plan here, you know, we're all seeing it for the first time, is, you know, how much additional real estate does it start to eat up? And then when you really lay it out so it works and gets all 7 or 9 buses, what does that really mean? And, so we're gonna have to go through an exercise to see, and whether or not we can achieve that and still be left with, some land for development.
So how do we do that?
Well, I think we gotta understand what the demand is. I mean, and,
Buses
well, for the buses and for the other things that we wanna try to put on the surface. If we're not, first plan we saw, put this out on Candle, if we take everything off Candle and move it interior to the lot, and then create, some circulation related to that, what's that impact? I mean, we're gonna have to sort of sit and go through that. And we can have one of the design guys here to look at it too.
And I think that gets back to
So
the point of, you know, what do we want it to, are we building a parking garage with some buses and vans around it, or are we building a transportation center to accommodate that will have some type of parking garage? Cause I don't know, I'm
Well, I mean,
nervous.
We already went through, if we integrate the buses with the parking garage gets higher, and it's gonna be 2 stories
We've
higher
already,
than it is now.
we have to make decisions and stick with
So,
them.
and you
So
need
I think we'll
to
be
be
sticking
ramping
with
it up
that.
to it,
All right.
you know.
Oh, he keeps bringing it up.
So, no, this, we're not gonna do the, so, I mean, not to put words in your, but Dave, does the moving at 18 feet, does that, were you really kind of,
Yeah, no, I was asking a question.
John's
Could
question
we,
about the real
well, so
estate.
let me summarize what I think the issue is, guys. And Paula, you tell me if I'm crazy.
I will.
Because I'm staring at this and if the NRTA buses go like this or go like this.
You're standing in front of us, honey.
Yeah. No matter who I do it, I'm gonna, so the buses either go like this or they go like this. To me, candidly, I don't know that it makes any real difference as long as the radiuses work. So this right here, the turn off just before the substation, Andy, doesn't make any difference to me. So the real issue becomes, would we give up more real estate, to John's point, and add a road that we're not sure we would normally do, when the town has adequate space in Candleport taxis? And the question then is very simple. Is there whatever that width is you need here to queue the right number of buses and park them safely? And that's a very simple thing to figure out once we're here on site. And again, you gotta understand, this is always going to be a 10% plan, because no one's going to spend $500,000 on the details until we know we have an agreement. That's the track. So we start with, what do we know works today? My guess is it's about 37, 38 feet. And today, it's about 90 feet long, and this building's 127. So you know you're getting longer. The question is, can we find you 37 feet? So I was trying to understand, is there any flexibility in the garage length without hurting the ramps that might gain the last 2 or 3 or 4 feet? Because at some point, National Grid's gonna start to say you're too close to the substation, you're making us nervous. And once we start going this way, it gets very expensive and very complicated, yet again, for the owners. Honestly, that's the issue.
So the tension is whether so in this scenario, we have this new street in between the new garage and the A&P. Right?
That's one of the tensions, right? If you go to the other slide, normally, you start to look at, the one that's after this a little bit. Yeah, I mean, that's creating a new street, it's putting a circulation, we've got tour and bus shuttles, so we're gonna have areas there, plus the bus, the yellow strip along, putting a road all the way out and through there. You know, with storage capacity along the edges of all that, and we just gotta figure out if that's what does that really mean?
Well, if we go to the, to the section, if you remember on our slide where we showed the end of the garage, the south end,
Mhm.
it was higher on the left side than it was on the right side.
Mhm.
If we put that bay back on the right side, that'll get us another 43 spaces. Well, it'll do us less than that, but it probably maintain the 270 spaces in the garage, but it would make the building shorter and higher by one
So,
bay.
I mean, Norm and Andy, I guess it was a little confusing for me to for the two of you to present two different scenarios. So I'm wondering if the two of you can't come together and come up with one scenario for us?
And I do not speak for the group, I speak for Dave Fredericks, I don't speak for the owners, I'm giving you my knee-jerk reaction as well. There's one other thing I would ask you to think about. I don't know how anybody else feels, but if we had 5 less spaces or 8 less spaces and this parking, the entrance was over here a little, so that to really Paula's point, the glass, if you will, also came down far enough where people could see and not, I just feel like that,
That's what won't happen.
you can't come in and go like with a curve.
You can't come in against against that right-hand corner of the building.
Okay. I was just trying to find that, bring those two a little bit closer together, that was all. Because the last 4 or 5 spaces, I don't think if the 270 was a number that was making us
One of the
nervous.
things we could try to do is recess that bay on that ground level a few feet.
And the purpose of that, to use it for what?
I think what Paula brought up, which is if this is a transit center, there's a group of people that are gonna be looking for the tour buses, and the more that southern face wall is closer to them, where they have good visual lines of what's down there, the more likely they're able to make that visual connection. I think that's the idea. It was, again, minor detail, but it helps people get comfortable that it's a transit center and a garage, not just a garage.
Is that part of the, we're at the 10% versus the 90%?
Yeah, and that's the problem. Where do you stop, right? I agree with you. That is the catch-22. The idea is to prove that certain concepts can work, and then the details will be worked out in the final plans.
And I think, and I know that makes, I understand, yeah.
I'll take deep breaths, I have faith. But Jim, I absolutely agree with you that if they could put it all together in one plan, that
Is
would
it
be
worth, I asked the group,
extremely
is it
helpful
worth
to
having that?
me. Yes, very
What do you-
helpful
I
to
mean,
me.
John, what do you?
Oh, yeah, no, I agree,
Dave?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we want you to get together and, come up with, based on the conversation here, one plan and take into consideration, Paula's, input and, give us some, to the extent you can, some, definition, color around the blue and white stripe area. Anything else from the group?
Very small detail, guys, but again, more politics. The area that is on the south end, you have the substation, then you show buildings. National Grid's made it crystal clear to me, so I'm trying to make it crystal clear to the group. They have no intention of developing that block, so they would like to see that as blank. They're not trying to mislead anybody. They plan on doing operational issues there. And so they don't want to represent that building. Yes, to the right.
No, to the
Right,
right.
block to
Right there, that right there.
All that
Showing
stuff.
that and just put down National Grid operations area. That's, don't want to mislead anybody. They have no intention of trying to build there.
So, we have a little bit if you want. So far, we've agreed with option A. We're asking for some clarification on exterior circulation. We've put some numbers to, some constructor project budget, but we're gonna have a process of, getting to kick the tires on those line items a little bit more. I'm trying to summarize what we've been doing the last hour and a half.
We've talked about some different people the group can talk to make sure they're comfortable with their approach to building the estimate. We'll put those things in place.
HTC.
Oh, and invited
Bring in
HTC.
HTC.
Okay. So we ready to wrap up and talk about if we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish today? Libby, what do you, Libby, your thoughts?
I'm listening. This all sounds, like what we've talked about so far, and I like the idea of getting more direct focus with NRTA on how the buses are gonna queue and how much room they need and the configuration and all that. So, what I'm interested in getting at is the, financial modeling.
Yep.
So,
So we'll need to decide on the building, and we need to kick the tires on the project budget. And then we need some conversation about, assumptions related to grants and those kinds of things. How do we,
Let's get additional slides up there, Jim, for that next part of the discussion.
oh, I'm sorry, oh, right, I'm sorry, we're on question, that's just question 1. So, can we go on to, should we go on to question 2?
Yeah, and just to close on question 1, the conversation that we've had today is exactly what I was looking to provoke. Because the reason that Norm is coming at one concept and I'm coming at it with a whole different one has something to do with us not necessarily coordinating, but it also has something to do with us not being clear as to what we can do on this site within the framework or the design envelope that we've been given here. And I was hoping that we might have this conversation to find our way through to answer that next piece, so thank you.
Oh, good, so we did, okay.
Excuse me, Andy?
Next slide.
Next
You
slide.
answer the slide
Yeah,
after,
yeah. Progress to date.
that says progress to date.
You got it.
Okay.
Good
So
job.
basically, this summarizes where we're at in the process right now. The fact that we've figured out we've defined what our site options and parameters are, what the design footprint envelope is. We've got a pretty good idea what our target design capacity should be. Vetted a number of options, identified some critical considerations, and are continuing to identify critical considerations for adding in modes of transportation. We've explored alternate uses for the facility and different technologies. And we're now getting to the point where we're refining our concepts down to a narrow field. The next step, and this is the next slide,
Got it.
in the next 30 to 45 days, will be to define that target design capacity for ancillary uses. Work out the bus issue.
So what does that mean?
To
Andy,
very clear
Andy.
understanding of what we need in terms of space within the structure. Go ahead.
That's what number 1 is? What does that mean? Define,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
what does it mean, define target design capacity for ancillary uses?
That would be how big should the waiting rooms be? Where
Okay.
should buses go? How much space should we set aside for incorporation of bike rentals? How much
Okay.
space do we need for ferry passenger queuing? How much space do we need for shuttle bus queuing?
Rest.
We want to narrow that down. Right now, we're holding a space of about 5,800 square feet. At some point, we need to be able to talk about how that might be divided up.
If they need an office, right?
Well, that's a whole nother thing. If the thought is that it's just gonna be an information center with information aids like we have today, then that's one topic. If it's the intent that the NRTA administrative offices are moving down there, I don't know if anyone's had those thoughts or discussion, then
So
that's gonna be a
item
different
1 is
type
we
of-
need to develop a program for that
Right.
space.
Correct.
Part of that will be a conversation you'll have with the landlord, town manager, about, where those spaces will go and what assumptions you all have about that.
I mean, because that's two different types of
I
space
understand that.
and
Yeah, I
usage, so,
understand.
yeah.
And it's gonna depend on how much space is being obviously made available
Okay,
for a program that would involve your office.
Once we clear all of that and we can get down to some final detail, at least the 10,000-foot level on design concepts and associated costs, I'm gonna need to get a general understanding for how we might finance this. And I need that so that I can create some sort of definition of what the debt service load is gonna be on this structure. Because what I'm gonna do is sort of a reverse engineering approach to the financial analysis. I'm gonna determine what our debt service is gonna be and then prorate that onto a per space basis. Determine what our operating expenses are gonna be and prorate that onto a per space basis. And then figure out how many days a year, how many hours a day can we defer that cost of? That's gonna come back and give us an idea of what it's gonna cost on a per hour basis, on a per day basis, on a per month basis, to support, if this project is gonna be self-supporting. And that's not necessarily a final financial analysis, but what it is an initial gut check to ask how feasible is this truly? And are there other things that need to happen in order to make this work? Part of that process is going to be also identifying potential supplemental funding sources, loans, grants, et cetera, and applying those to the formula as well to get an understanding for how high or how low our costs can be. And just to provide you folks with an order of magnitude, we were talking earlier around a loan amortization model here on $15 million for project cost at 4% APR over a 25-year term, and some fairly conservative assumptions for annual operating expense on a 270 space garage. And that structure, just back of the napkin, would need to generate about 358 spaces per month, or an average of $12.80 per day on an average 28-day per month operating cycle, or about $1.60 per hour per space, assuming an 8-hour operating day in order to offset the cost. And that's the kind of exercise with some more detail that I'm looking to complete in the next 45 days.
okay.
Anybody have any questions before we move on?
So you say 45 days, so today is, what, the third week of April? So sometime around the middle of June, we're starting to get results? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we would come back around the middle of June to get this first cut out. And then there's a second cut that needs to be made to this. And that's on the next slide, Norm.
Got it.
But before we move on, Dave, do you have additional questions or
No.
concerns?
No, I got it.
So are you, on the earlier slide, you're gonna lead us through a process to say what information you need, and who's gonna get it and all that kind of stuff? We'll do that at our next meeting, or how does that get accomplished?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So could you do, so in the earlier slide, you had a bunch of next steps over the next 30 to 45 days. And a lot of that was data that you needed input to put into your model. And you're gonna lead us through the exercise to get that, I'm assuming.
Yes, that is part of the methodology,
Good,
correct.
okay. So now we're on next steps, 45 to 90 days.
Okay. Once we've done that first cut, we need to go back and revisit the question of what we think the ownership/development structure structure is gonna be on this project. Who's gonna be the developer, who's gonna carry the financing, et cetera, because that's gonna have significant impact on what kind of grants you can get and also what your terms of finance are. So, we're gonna have to have a conversation about that after we establish sort of our baseline financials and get clear on how who we think is going to own/operate this and how, who's gonna be the primary developer, who's gonna go and get the funding for this, and what kind of funding are you gonna go get to support this? And once we've defined that, that will lead to some revisions on our base assumptions in terms of finance, what our operating cycle or market is, and what kind of supplemental funding we can get. That'll be the time where we really need to also define the action steps we need to go through in order to get that funding. And then that will cause us to go back and refine that initial financial projection to establish the minimum coverages. And if we're looking at multiple options at that point, this is an appropriate place to really sit down as a working group and go through a matrix analysis in order to weigh the costs and benefits of each one of these approaches.
Understood.
Good.
Good, next one?
Anybody, any questions from anybody? John?
That's right. You gotta do the
Okay.
first one.
The 90 to 120.
Well, 90 to 120, we worked through the process, so now we're going to start wrapping it up with documentation, preparing the draft report, meaning to vet the draft, incorporating comments from that, preparing a draft presentation, letting that draft presentation, incorporating any comments for revision, and then getting ready to present these findings to the general public and town selectmen and revising as needed.
Next.
So there are a number of things that will need to happen beyond this level that fall outside of our current scope. But if we're going to bring this project eventually to completion, to reality, these are things that it occurred to me are going to need to happen once we've got a final concept that's got general public support. And the first thing is going to be getting together this conceptual facade and massing illustrations. You're going to need an architect to do that so that the general public can react to that. We've already heard a lot of concern around the table about what this is going to look like, how big it's going to be, et cetera. That is the way to go about addressing that. Given the interior concepts, what is the space within the facility going to look like, especially if you're talking about making waiting areas, transit areas, lobbies, et cetera. And again, that's something for an architect or interior designer to deal with. If this is going to be a public-private venture, you're going to have to hammer out the structure of that and get agreements in place. That's a job for legal counsel. Preparing grant for funding applications is something we can help with, but often you need a legal counsel and you may need a specialist, depending on what you're going after, to help prepare some of those applications. We've talked a couple of times about the idea of looking at financing from a larger perspective. Right now, we're kind of limited to the four walls of the structure, but there has always been this question in the background about, do you start charging for parking across downtown? Do you establish a parking benefit district? If so, what does that look like? How does it potentially play into this project if this is a completely public project being funded by some sort of dedicated enterprise fund? And that's certainly something we can help through when the time becomes appropriate. Once you've solved all of that, usually it's time to go through the design process and hammer out your schematics and then your design documents, your construction documents, get into the details of how you're gonna control access to the facility. And then there'll be a number of questions in terms of both traffic and environmental impact and permitting that are gonna have to be addressed, before you put a shovel in the ground and bring this project into fruition.
All right.
So-
I mean, we don't, you know, there are a lot of other actions outside the current scope that may not be on here, such as, you know, town meeting and those kinds of things, but I guess we can all assume those would appear at some point in the future. Any questions from anyone in the room? Okay, Andy, go ahead.
So the next step is working again in that 30 to 45D cycle here. And so what I'm going to start preparing at my end is setting some dates to come down and meet with Paul and other stakeholders to work through these questions about incorporation of the space, incorporation of bus operations within the facility to make sure that we get clear on that. And then continuing to work through the questions of design capacity in the spaces within the structure for other multimodal uses here. And based on that, we'll, I'm sure, have to go back and refine some of the concepts that we have surrounding option A and the costs associated with those. I would assume that we need to have a conversation with somebody on the town side about what we should assume in terms of general terms of finance going forward. Just to give us an understanding for if this was truly a completely publicly owned and funded project here, what kind of interest rate you might qualify for, typical terms of financing, if there's any requirement for reserve fund, what's that requirement, et cetera. I am working through the question of potential market and operating cycle right now, primarily through the data that I've been provided to date here. I'm sure there is additional data or insight I'm going to need. I don't know that right now off the top of my head, but as those come up, I'll be issuing those requests through Janet to try and figure out who I need to talk to get clarity there.
Good.
And we're already working on identifying those potential supplemental funding sources. What I would anticipate at the end of the 45 days that we're producing here is a very detailed PowerPoint that we can sit down and walk folks through that presents the concept, presents our assumptions on costs in finance terms here, walks folks through the financial model and talks about the operating program, and then walks them through the calculations till we get down to that financial question. So that's what we will be shooting for in mid-June.
Okay. What's the next step for this group today? Do we set up a time for another meeting?
I would suggest that's the right answer. I think that we should try to get Andy over here to answer some of these questions and shoot for something certainly no later than the middle of May.
But probably with a plan and maybe some input from a layout, some of the layout people too. Because you'd be sure that anything that we move forward on actually can be done.
What's a layout person?
Well, you know, either one of the designers that we had look at the original Harbor Place. Because it's not, when we start talking about, well, we need this area here, we need that area here, and I think also, Dave, we gotta have a discussion with National Grid, because it also, you know, it's gonna impact additional pieces of dirt that we're gonna say, this is gonna go away, and we're gonna put a road here, and we're gonna put pull-over bus places here,
We'll give them free bus passes.
I understand that, but.
For life.
Yeah, for life. But we ought to have that discussion,
Okay.
because be sure that's not a non-starter,
You probably should have that
like right away.
right away, and then,
Absolutely.
and then decide when we meet.
No, I'd still
Okay.
schedule a meeting, we'll go
Okay.
forward, but
Okay.
it may be informed by, we don't have this piece of dirt to
Okay.
play with.
Right.
So,
We'll take a look at shortening the garage days and adding that one level.
Do we really
back on
wanna
the
think about
west
shortening
side.
the garage?
Well, again, I'm not a garage designer. If you take the 10 spaces on the wall that is on the parking lot, the Stop and Shop parking lot today, and eliminate it so the garage can slide over, you gain 18 feet, and I think you'll find, along with what's already shown, you then have more than enough room to probably deal with Paula's concerns about outside parking. The only reason I brought up shortening the garage. That
Without the
eliminates-
road?
Hmm?
Without the road? Is that, what's that,
No,
what's
no.
the impact on the extra road?
All it does is widen the area between the substation and the garage to allow space.
Oh,
That's what I'm
okay.
trying to achieve.
We also need to coordinate where those buses are gonna stand and how people get in and out of the garage by
Right.
car.
Right. But I think when you see how it works today, I think you'll, right, so you've got to see all that.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if you can cheat the garage, that 18 feet, honestly, I think you'll find that helps the problem, especially if you see how it works today.
We'll take a look at it and send it around.
So,
What I don't want to do is trigger a ramp problem or some other complication by doing that.
so it's really two meetings, there's a meeting on, a follow-up meeting to this, but also then a meeting on site to
Yeah.
to have some
and that would happen before.
before we
next
meet
meeting.
next, right?
Before we leave today, can we also just kind of run through who's doing what for the next meeting?
Yes.
Well, I heard, okay, so 3 weeks, what's 3 weeks from today?
I would be looking at some week between the 14th and the 18th of May.
Could we do it 3 weeks from today? The 15th?
It would mean Andy has to come out here sometime late
Before
next
that.
week, yes.
Andy, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So we're looking at the 15th here on site with you and Norm and everyone, but having you had come out here sometime between that, but before that to do an on-site. We're asking if that's possible.
Yeah, I have, the second, the third, the ninth, 10th, and 11th all open right now, so, I could do it on any of those days.
So why don't you get with Paula and Janet to figure that out, okay?
Either day works for me.
Okay?
But what about the 15th? Can you do the 15th for this group or not?
Yeah, I'm open on the 15th.
Okay. And then, so we're gonna do it on the 15th at this time, or do you wanna do it at 10:30?
John?
That's better than 2 o'clock.
10:30 is fine.
10:30, okay. 10:30, Andy? Yeah. Libby? 10:30?
10:30 works for me.
Okay. And then to Libby's question about who's gonna do what, I heard Andy say he's gonna develop a list of data requirements and share it with Janet, who's gonna figure out who needs to get that information. Is that correct, Andy?
That's correct.
Does that answer your question, Libby?
Yeah, I think so.
Anything else for this group today?
Am I inviting the HDC to the next, the May 15th meeting?
What do y'all think of that? Yeah?
I think to some extent we have to find out what the reaction's going to be.
Yeah, should that, I'm just talking aloud here, but is that gonna take a while?
You wanna do that separately?
Yeah.
Maybe,
Maybe they could do it before or after that,
It-
after our meeting?
I'd rather have more of an idea, rather than show them a bunch of slides and say, what do you think of that?
I think
it's early.
I think it's early because you have to understand what we're really gonna do, and they're
Yeah.
gonna care about
Right.
where we're gonna move the buses and where we're gonna park
Right.
people, and
Yeah.
that'll all become part of the thinking.
Even
We're
though
gonna
it's,
answer that before
even
you-
though
If you don't
it's-
answer that beforehand, I don't know how you do, you know.
okay.
So I think we'd wait on the HDC, okay? Anything else? Thank you, everyone, for your attention. We're adjourned. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Moved. All those in favor, aye. Opposed, no.
On the second.
Take care.